Your circle will change as you accomplish your goals and level up. Everybody can't go. All right, we live, y'all. Good evening and welcome to another happy Wednesday and another Everybody Can't Go Convo. Y'all know I'm always super excited about the people that I be bringing to y'all because they bomb. I already told y'all, I don't know how many times that I only mess with high quality people. And that is who I learn from. That is who I learn alongside. So today I'm bringing to you guys a very dynamic speaker and author, and of course, one of my coaches, Dimyas Perdue. And we're welcome to the show. And give us a brief intro. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, listen, before I do the intro, I got to say thank you. You know what I mean? Like if everybody can't go and you allowing me to go, that means something. That means you know what I mean? I made it into that good company. So thank you first and foremost for reaching out and allowing me to be able to come in and spend some quality time with you is what I'll say. You know what I mean? Many times when people jump on podcasts, they think they're coming because of who they are. You know, I think I'm here because of who we are. So I appreciate you for that. And I appreciate you allowing me to be able to share what I have with your audience. Listen, I mean, you already gave them my name, but I'll do it again for the people who going to mess it up later on. I'm Dimyas Perdue. Yeah, man, I'm me. Just a little dude from Montgomery, Alabama. I spent 22 years in the Marine Corps prior to me departing and doing what I do right now as a coach. Found myself in the coaching capacity because of what I went through as a Marine, my lived experiences working within that organization, and also my lived experiences of just being a husband and a father. Married to my beautiful bride, I've been blessed to bring 6 beautiful children in this world. I teach emotional intelligence full time. My business, my coaching mantra, my model, the way I do life is all based on emotional intelligence. And so that's what I do primarily. And for me, my whole goal is to educate people, right, on elevating their levels of emotional intelligence. But more importantly, I love coaching men and fathers to be able to elevate their levels of emotional intelligence so that they can be present and emotionally available in the lives of the people who need them the most. You know, you mentioned the authorship. You know, I'm the author of Elevation Requires Change, owner and founder of Purdue Leadership Institute. I appreciate you. There we go. Owner and founder of Purdue Leadership Institute. And we teach and coach and travel everywhere, whether it's stateside or abroad. Wherever you need me, wherever he's calling me to go, that's where I go. So I appreciate you once again.
Thank you, thank you. So, you ladies, you heard that he specializes in coaching the gents. So, if you have that special someone in your life, whether you know if it's your son, your nephew, your cousins, and all them, go ahead and even if they're not a regular subscriber to the podcast, send them over this one because some of this information that we're about to dive into today, it could be very beneficial. And look, I'm a lady. I can, have a conversation with them. But look,
Come on.
like
Come on.
I done brought y'all somebody that can teach the men. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So a couple weeks ago, we had the Learning Yourself workshop over here at the Everybody Can't Go camp. And we took our participants through the flight assessment. And on day one, we talked a lot about self awareness and why it's important and like how you have to be aware of yourself first before you're able to like extend yourself into being able to understand other people, communicate better, and get those better results for moving throughout the world. And so when you talk about self-awareness and teach about self-awareness, what are the top 3 things that you recommend for people as if when they're new into learning about or practicing self-awareness?
Yeah, I love it. Phenomenal question. Self awareness is the first key component to emotional intelligence, right? You hear people talk about emotional intelligence and they're like, oh, I'm emotionally intelligent because I know my feelings. I know how I feel, or I know what does this, but it's bigger than that. You know what I mean? And so before I talk about the steps I give for self awareness, I want people to understand where that premise comes from with emotional intelligence. And so by definition, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and understand the emotions in yourself and others. But more importantly, how are you managing this newfound level of awareness to improve your actions and your behavior? And all of that starts, as you just mentioned, with the first pillar being self, specifically self awareness. And so, one of the main things we tell people to do when it comes to self awareness, one of the first things is you have to understand what are the sources of that emotion. What are the sources, like, right? How do you feel it? How does it show up first? Because long before we react, right, we feel that in our bodies, and most people are unaware that there's a physiological response long before we actually do something. You know what I'm saying? It's like, let's relate it to eating food. Prior to me, prior to me eating the meal that I wanted, it started with a craving, right? But you have to recognize what that craving is first. Like, I got a craving for something sweet. I got a craving for something sour. I got a craving for something savory, right? So there's a craving in the body that then tells me I need to do something, right? That same thing happens when it comes to our emotions. We have a physiological response first, right? And when that response happens, it's our job, just like we recognize we're hungry, it's our job to recognize, what is this feeling? What is causing this feeling? What is the feeling? And more importantly, now I can be able to control what I do. So that first thing that I tell people is to feel your emotions first. Understand, how does that happen within your body? And I won't dive all the way into that yet, but that's the first thing you have to do, is be able to feel it. The second thing is understanding your emotions, realizing the importance of understanding that emotion as it happens. Too many people recognize that their emotions weren't what they should have been when they've been what I like to call emotionally hijacked. You know what I mean? Like, you were in control. It's not about you having the wheel. Just doesn't have the wheel, right? Your emotions got the wheel. And I tell people they have to remind themselves, first and foremost, never to allow those emotions to get the wheel. Recognize what's happening, what's keeping you from letting go of it. So those are the first two things I would say for people on that self-awareness journey. One, recognizing that you feel your emotions first when we're talking about awareness. Two, recognize who has the wheel.
Okay, that's dope. That's dope. So, when you're going into talking about not allowing our emotions to like reach over and grab that wheel and take over from
Yeah.
us, what are some of the ways that you used to experience when those emotions would take over and grab the wheel from you? And if you have an example, and how were you able to overcome that?
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, here's what you're gonna get from me, and I'll tell this to everybody. I'm gonna be one of the most transparent human beings that are out there, and I have to be that way, especially when we're talking about emotional intelligence, because I'm the guy that's traveling and teaching and educating people on this. But I didn't get to where I am with this level of education without making the mistakes. I did not get to where I am by not making those mistakes. And so, a prime example, when my emotions took over, I shared this. You know, of course, I shared this with our call. As a Marine, I experienced significant combat. I experienced significant combat on a few occasions, and that changed the way it changed the way I did life. It changed the way I communicated, because there were a lot of things I wasn't dealing with. Right, I didn't want to talk to certain people about certain things. I didn't want to. I didn't even want to think those thoughts, and because of that, there were things I was dealing with that I just compartmentalized and I put it away. And I thought I was being effective by doing that. I thought, you know what, I call it putting my emotions off to the side. I call it, you know what, I'll deal with that later. That's not important. You know what I mean? Keep pushing, keep going, stay hard, be a beast, all those things. Those were the things I did. But that was an ineffective way of managing something that lives with me no matter what. It's impossible for me to do something without emotion being involved, right? And so what stemmed from the root of it, having this combat trauma, uh, I became that person who had emotional outbursts, and I started to bleed on people who didn't cut me, because I would keep it pinned up for so long. And then finally, the unsuspecting person, whether it was my bride, or whether it was my kids, or whether it was somebody else, you know what I mean? Somebody cutting me off in traffic, I would snap, I would click off safe, and I would either have this overly emotive machismo reaction, I'm that guy, or it would just be loud. You know what I mean? It would just be loud because I did not know how to effectively handle that. You know what I mean? I felt like I put this thing together for so long. I had held it so long, but now I'm exploding. And so that's one of the first ways that I recognized that I was being emotionally hijacked, is because when I thought I had it under control, it only took one small thing that shouldn't have pushed me over the edge that actually got me over the edge. But had I managed it effectively, I would have been able to manage my reactions better when that situation rose.
Okay, okay. So, one of the things that somewhat intrigued me about your answer, and you touched on it just slightly, when we're talking about like managing emotions and how to express them, a lot of times it's okay for like girls and women to be emotional. It's
Come on.
okay for,
Come on.
for us to cry, to
Yeah.
say I want a hug. I would like to be loved and cared for in this way. I would like to show emotion in it's almost like for women, our range is so wide that it's off the screen. But for men and males in society, and dare I say it, go a level deeper, Black men specifically, is kind of like there's an expectation that, like, okay, you get to experience this much emotion.
Right.
And in my experience, I kind of start to see that all of the emotion is crammed into this small space that is
Yeah.
allowed for you guys to express yourself. And a lot of times it comes out as explosive anger because there isn't room, or it's not like a societal thing for you guys
Yeah.
to move outside of that range. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. The first thing is that comes from these societal expectations. Our environment has created this thing, and social media has painted this picture of what a man is supposed to be like. What a man is supposed to be like when it comes to showing our emotions. Society has painted this picture, and there are many other things that affect how we operate and what we choose to emote and what we don't. One of them is, who did we see modeling these behaviors growing up? And for
Hmm.
me, for example, I grew up in an all women household. There were no men. None of my cousins had fathers. There were no fathers in the neighborhood. It was just like deadbeat city, right? No men around. So it was only women. And so I was always brought up, you have to be the man. Well, I thought that meant being that tough guy. That's what I thought it meant. I thought it meant not wearing my heart on my sleeve. That's my natural me. My natural thing is I'm a lover, right? But here's where the issues come in. It is always acceptable for a man to celebrate and scream when they are watching a football game. That's an emotion. It's acceptable for me to tell somebody, it's acceptable for me to show frustration. That's acceptable. But you mentioned women having the ability to open up and share themselves, and women being able to cry. But what happens? What is the perception when a man cries? The greater majority sees a man crying as weak. Let me share this with you. My son, when he was about to turn 18, I started to have those real life conversations with him because he thought he was a man at that point. He's like, Dad, I'm ready for the world. I was like, dog, you're like, what you mean you're ready for the world? You're 18 years old. You hadn't seen anything yet. And I began to have that real financial conversation with him, talking about taxes and talking about how to go about doing these things he would need to know. And he got overwhelmed. Overwhelmed to the point where he began to cry. But let me tell you what he did, Jess. He kept turning his head away from me and he kept wiping his face. And I was like, what are you doing? He was like, Dad, and he began to get frustrated. He was like, Dad, I shouldn't be like this. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I shouldn't be crying. I was like, who? I was like, what do you mean you shouldn't be crying? He says, Dad, men don't cry. And so I grabbed him by his face. And I'm not talking about forceful. I'm talking about with an embrace. Like, look me in my eyes, son. I said, who told you that? Who told you that? I was like, I never told you that. But listen to me. As I said, I never told you that. I heard, but you showed him. You showed him
Hmm.
that. You showed him that men didn't cry. And it was at that point that I realized that life needed to change. It was because I feared people knowing how I felt was the reason why I didn't show that sadness. I feared what people would do with that information is the reason why I didn't share that sadness. So many men fear what people would do with it. They would be seen as being weaker, seen as not being able to handle stressful situations if they overly express who they are. But the problem is the prison systems are full of people who did not properly manage their emotions. I can speak to that, not just talking about it like it's a foreign concept, but my oldest brother was doing a life sentence and he passed away in prison. My youngest brother, 38 years old, is doing a 20-year sentence. And I'm the one that got out because I'm the one that made the decision to start working on the emotions. Actually, I'm the one who didn't get caught back then, right? And was able to change my life for the better. But now I'm having conversations with my brother who, in a moment, or moments plural, made a decision based on his heightened emotional state that caused him to now to have never seen the majority of my children in the last few years. And so to go back to the original question, what are some of the things I see? Societal expectations of who we're supposed to be, not having people who can properly model, not role models, but having people who can model the desirable behavior that is desperately needed for men, especially men of color.
All right. And you are one of those models. So
Try my
um,
best to be,
I really
yes.
can't wait to see what you do in the future.
Yeah,
Just being one of those faces that is pretty much airing this out
yeah,
and talking about some of the things that plague men, and taking it that level deeper, that plague black men, because and you guys, I say that because that's mostly who I'm surrounded by. And just being able to have that outlet, and
yeah,
to know that, like, no, it's okay. Like, for girls, we got I forget who sings it, but it's that "It's Okay Not to Be Okay" song, and I get
yeah.
to rock out down the highway. It don't
Right.
always have to be like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna listen to this drill song, I gotta go
Right.
hard, I'm gonna get through this. And it's like, for me, I've experienced personally that for my relationship, that openness and that
Yes.
learning to express a range of emotions, not just
Yeah.
that little niche over here
Come
that you
on.
guys are crammed into. It really made my relationship more blissful by leaps and bounds. We
Yeah.
were able to enjoy things more. So I can tell you fellas, from the women's perspective, that it changes the way that you show up, so much so that, like, when I tell you, it's a whole list of things that within
Yeah.
a relationship it
Yeah.
can be corrected just by doing the what starts out as being uncomfortable thing because it's unfamiliar, and allowing yourself to explore that range of emotions,
Yeah.
and to feel safe in that space.
Yeah, people got to learn to be able to embrace that vulnerability, right? But you mention it. You mention it being uncomfortable. It's a level of discomfort, but that's why I always say your job is to lean into that discomfort. Lean into that. You know what I mean? Find a safe space to be able to do it. You may not be able to openly do it with everybody. I'm not telling every man in the world to go and jump out and go and say, hey, here's what I'm dealing with today. Let me cry on your shoulder. That's not what I'm saying. But there is
Hmm.
somebody in your space for the man that's out there. All right, since we kind of jumping on them right now, there's somebody out there in your space who has gone through what you've gone through. They have the experience. They've already won that battle, but they're just looking for somebody like you to lean on them and they're willing to listen. And check it out. If there's anybody out there who says, well, I don't have anybody, just to send you my information. Send it to me. I'll listen to you. So now there's no excuse. There's no excuse for it. So yeah, you're right. There are so many songs about women. You can let your hair down, talk about what you're going through. You can do it, but the guys got to go in and they got to listen to a heartbeat, right, to make themselves feel good. But all we're doing is lying to ourselves because we're not recognizing and understanding what's actually taking place with us. We're being distracted by the music, and most of the music that we're listening to is placing us in an altered state of emotion that's not real. And so we can lie to ourselves when we're on the road, listen to the music. We can lie to ourselves when we're surrounded by our friends. You can go and drown yourself in your sorrows by drinking or doing everything else that takes you away from what you should be actively working on. But you can lie to everybody. But until you go and stand in front of that mirror, when you get in front of that mirror, that's when the game changes. I realized when I was going through the most in my life, when I was going through my hardest times, one, after experiencing combat, but more importantly, when I lost my sons in 2020, when I lost my twin sons in 2020, I wanted to feel like everything was okay. But I was at the lowest point of my life because I thought I had already seen the depth of what depression looked like by the combat trauma I had. I thought I experienced the depth of depression, with the other life experiences I had. But when I had to hand my sons off 8 days apart, Then I really had to sit with the fact that my bride does not have her two babies. I've got a room full of twin everything. I got two cribs in the room. I just bought a Suburban. I'm driving back with two car seats in a Suburban with a bride, right, with no babies. You know what I mean? You want to talk about what's happening with somebody mentally, the different things that you're going through. I'm starting to question God. I'm starting to question life. I'm trying to figure out, what did I do wrong? What did I do to deserve this? And now I got all of this, but I still have to be a father to my other children. I still have to show up to work because I'm a United States Marine. I still have to take care of my bride, and she has to be a wife. She was also a Marine, so she had to go to work and show up. Oh, by the way, for the people who didn't know the story, whenever they would see us, oh my God, you had the babies already. How are those beautiful boys doing?
Mm.
It is 2024. My sons would have been 4 years old, and we still get that question on a regular basis. And so I have to do something with those emotions that I feel. I have to feel my emotions first. Think about that thing that happens. And then I need to be able to have adequate strategies to be able to deal with that situation. Because I could easily overreact in that situation, but I'll be overreacting with somebody who's probably coming at me with genuineness. They just didn't know. Right. And so there are certain things that we go through that are going to be super difficult to deal with, but it's about how do we take that level of awareness that we have and have effective management strategies to get us through that situation. That's what it's all about. The problem is not just with awareness. Some people are fully aware of what makes them tick. They're fully aware of the things that they like. They're fully aware of the things that they dislike, but they are not fully aware of how to go about it in management, Jess. And that's where the real issues come in. It's in the management, not just the awareness.
Mm. So with that, and I'm sorry for your loss, as I've told you before.
Yeah.
And you guys will make sure that his information is in the show notes per usual, where you'll be able to reach out to Dimyas directly.
Yeah, please.
Um, Now, while you were talking about all of those different emotions and things, that brings me to one of the chapters in your book. That was chapter 28, where you talked about carrying all the things, all the things, all
Yeah.
the things,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that we have choices about some of the things that we'll let go.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys may have heard me say before on previous episodes, telling people to get their dump truck off of you, or how many bags of trash are you going to carry. In the book, you talk about this as a weighted vest, and that we get to choose how many of those little slots are we going to fill on that weighted
Yeah.
vest. And what in your life, or what advice would you give when people are trying to decide, what am I going to carry and keep with me? What am I going to carry for a time, a reason,
Yeah.
a season,
There
and
you go.
when and how to release those things where we need to take those weights out and let that stuff go?
Come on. The title of the book is Elevation Requires Change. Elevation, the ascent, requires change. There's certain equipment I need to have with me when I first start a hike. Depending on the distance that I'm going to go, there's certain things I need to have with me. I need to have water. I need to have, some carbohydrates. I need some snacks along the way, depending on how long I'm going to be going. There are certain things I need. But if I'm going high in altitude, then I need certain additional jackets, right? When the altitude changes, maybe need something for the wind when it changes, maybe a different pair of boots. I definitely need to have numerous pairs of socks. So there's certain things I have to have with me as I elevate. And no matter what, I have to carry these things because I may not need it right now, but I'm going to need it later. But then there are other things as I start to move that I realize that I'm no longer going to need. And some of the things that I'm not going to need as I ascend, Jess, I mentioned having some of the food and some of the snacks and some of the water. I don't need that trash anymore. I don't need to take the trash with me to the top of where I'm trying to go because I've already used it for what it needed. It already provided what it needed for that time. And now I need to discard that. But the problem is most people on their journey towards elevation, they're still carrying the trash that they needed at the beginning. Or not even the thing that they needed at the beginning. They thought they needed this trash. They thought they needed this person. They thought that they needed this job. They thought they needed all of these things. But the reality is you did not need that. But too many people are having the desire to elevate, but they're not willing to change their load. And so when I wrote that story about carrying the load, talking about there being numerous different types of numerous weights that we carry. These are weights that other people have placed on us. They're burdens that we've taken on that we didn't need to take on. You've taken on the burdens of your parents because they went through something and now they put that on you and you're holding on to it because they failed and they didn't succeed in business. They're telling you that you might not do it either. So you're carrying that fear, you're carrying that doubt, you're carrying their frustrations, you're carrying things with you on your ascent, and it's unnecessary. And when you're carrying extra, it weighs you down and prevents you from being able to move in the way that you're supposed to move. So whether it's something that you brought with you or something that someone gave you, the goal is to start to shed the things that are unnecessary. Because as the elevation changes, the more weight you carry changes. And you have that option to continue to carry that load or recognize that, you know what, I don't even need this anymore because this pack is what's required for this journey. Sometimes it's not about taking one or two things out. In that relationship, yeah, you're getting this, but you're not getting this. So you know what? I'm going to keep taking you with me. But there's a complete pack over there that you can use. So why not shed that load and go and get exactly what you need? Because that's the thing that can help you get to where you are. But the problem is most people want to hold on to things. I want to hold on to it because I don't know what will happen to this person. I want to hold on to it because I don't know how they'll be without me. We've been together for so long. I want to hold on to this job because, it provides me the financial security, but I'm really not happy here. From an emotional intelligence standpoint, people will continue to work a job even though they hate being there. And so one of the number one reasons why people leave jobs is because of a bad boss. But people get so caught up in holding on to that load, they'll stay there and keep dealing with drama, dealing with frustrations, and not shedding that load and going, trusting yourself and going out and doing exactly what you're supposed to do. So that's my premise behind that. Just a little short bit. I guess that wasn't too short, but you got me hyped when you brought that up.
No, that's really, really good. That's really good. Because talking about letting go of those things, letting go of those people, letting go of some of those emotions,
Yeah.
I found that even though a lot of different speakers and coaches, they have their version of talking about that,
Yeah.
everyone's story and the way that they convey that resonates with people differently.
Yeah.
There have been people
Absolutely.
who have come to me and they're like, everybody can't go. Oh my gosh, that is so mean. That is so harsh. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh wait, no, time out.
That's
There's
perfect.
there's steps
It's
to this thing.
perfect. It's
I'm like, there's
perfect.
there's levels to this. When once you
Yeah.
get to the point where folks are done and they can't go, there have
Yeah.
already been some fail safes built in there. They had the opportunity to go with you. They had the
Come on.
opportunity to grow with you. There
Yes.
were boundaries that were communicated to these folks. They
Hmm.
decided to overstep those boundaries and or to not respect those boundaries. They decided to not participate in a growth journey. They
Yeah.
ultimately decided to not go with you.
Yeah. Hey,
So
you got to be
as
built up
as
for this.
we're
Go ahead.
you go ahead. I'm sorry. I got a little lag
Hey,
on my side.
no,
So
no, it's all good. I'm saying you got to be built up for this. The higher you go, the altitude changes. The higher you go, the altitude changes. And if you're not prepared for that, if you haven't been doing altitude changes, you can't even handle the pressure. Even if I wanted to take you there, if you hadn't done the training and development, you're going to be a hindrance to me up here because now I'm going to have to
mhm,
carry you as well. Everybody can't go because everybody cannot handle what's at this level. It's not just you can't go with me. You're not properly positioned to be able to get there because you haven't been through what's required to be able to do it. When I was in the Marine Corps, we wouldn't just start people out on 10-mile hikes. We would start you out on build-up hikes. You would do a 1 mile, you would do a 3 mile, you would do a 5 mile. And this day would be with a smaller pack. This day would be with a heavier pack. And eventually you got to that point where you could do the 10 mile, the 12 mile, the 15-mile hike. But we didn't just get you and just take you to that point. But there'll be a lot of people who want to come in and you've already been proven. You're already at the 10-mile mark. Your team is already at the 10-mile mark, but they want to come in where you are, knowing they haven't done anything, expecting to go where you're going, where you cannot handle the rigors of what's required to be where I'm trying to go. So it's not that I wouldn't want you to be there, but you're just not physically, mentally, nor emotionally prepared to be able to go where I'm supposed to go. And I can't allow you to be a hindrance to my journey because I'm on assignment.
that's real. That's real. And what that reminds me of also is we talk about very often. It's still up there in the corner, y'all. Writing the vision, and
Yeah.
that's one of the base reason for why I'm like, no, I have to do this journal because when you don't know what the destination is, that's one of the main things that keeps you like, well, you could come to.
Yeah.
You don't know whether you hiking 1 mile or hiking 10 miles. How
Come
do
on.
you know who's able to go with you?
Come on.
You don't know you haven't planned out what's ahead of you. You haven't planned out what you need to prepare for. And I love the concept of you talking about the pack as you're and you guys were talking about like wolf pack, African dog pack. We're talking about pack that they use in the military, the supply packs. So a book bag with all of your stuff in it. When you were talking about the pack and the supplies that you would need, as you guys are going on those different hikes and things that you would do, it reminded me of why it's so important to write that vision down. Because I mean, would I like to join in? Sure, I'd like to go for a mile hike with you guys. But if you guys just say, well, we're going hiking, grab your pack, Jess. Jessica is not prepared to do no 10-mile hike with no 40-pound pack on my back. Now, if you say grab a pack, and I might be able to handle a little 10-pound pack if we're going
Mhm.
for a mile hike, maybe a 2-mile hike. But even then, are we doing this 2-mile hike and I'm carrying this 10-pound pack? Is this on a slow incline
Come on.
or are we climbing?
Come on.
I need to know that before I say, oh, Demyas, I'm going hiking with y'all. Am I? And that's why writing
Yeah.
that vision down is so important,
Absolutely.
because sometimes we'll tack on to volunteer for something you don't even know the details yet. And I love you using the physical rigor that is required in those specifications, because that I think will resonate with a lot of people in terms of like, yeah, walking is one thing. I ain't running with nobody nowhere. Y'all,
Right.
look, I don't look like I'm running
Yeah.
anywhere if there is not danger. And so there
Yeah.
are a lot of different, and it's not just one thing I need to know. I don't just need to know,
Yeah.
well, how long are we going to be gone? Because even the amount of time that we're going on this hike,
Yeah.
you could say, oh, we'll be gone for about an hour. But to do 5 miles in 1 hour,
Yeah.
that means that we moving at a certain pace. I don't know what
We
that
moving.
equates to in 5 miles an hour. In miles per hour, but I know that that's not a walking pace to
Yeah.
get
We
five
moving.
miles within 1 hour. You really moving, okay?
Yeah. We moving.
So, oh, I guess that would be you moving at 5 miles an hour, but that's a
It's all
jog.
good.
And so all of those different specifications, those are things that we need to know that sometimes we don't think enough to ask. And it goes back into write that vision down first so that you know
Yeah.
exactly where you're going, who needs to be
Absolutely.
with you, and what are those specifications of what exactly it is that you're doing.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well said. But too many people don't want to do that. It requires too much focus. It requires too
Hmm.
much focus. I know I want to be successful, is what people say, but they don't take the time to really plan out what it takes to be able to get there. You know, when I talked about, hey, I know I want to write a book. Oh, I want to write a book. There's a lot. Oh, people tell you you should write a book. Then, okay, so write the book and write out what the book is going to be about, and write out the sections and start putting out your stories. Because again, somebody else is going to be fighting this thing that you have the ability to be able to help them with. You know what I mean? But people don't want to sit down and plan. We rather be distracted. And you know my saying, I always say, when you identify your distractions, you identify the root cause of your inaction. You're wondering why you don't do it. You wonder why you haven't accomplished what you said you wanted to accomplish. It's because you haven't identified your distractions, which are the root cause. Go and figure that out, and you'll figure life out.
That's real. That's real. So, for in the book, in your book, Elevation Requires Change, there was another chapter as I dove deeper into the book that stuck out to me as well, and it was talking about being mindful of swapping packs. So
Yeah.
we're talking about those packs again, guys, that we just spoke on. And the main message that I got from that was be empathetic, and it resonated with me so, because I always tell people, we say it so often that I feel like some of the catchphrases that we constantly hear or grew up hearing, or we say them a lot, or people have said them a lot, it kind of loses its meaning. And we
Yeah.
always talk about, well, put yourself in someone else's shoes. And I truly do try to empathize with the other person's what they could have been thinking, what may be their thoughts, what is driving the way that they have acted toward me, whether that is happiness, sadness, if someone has lashed out. I try to consider, well, what are some of the other things behind? Because I didn't do anything to make
Yeah.
you upset at me. but what are
Yeah.
some of the feelings that could be the reason why you lashed out toward me? And
Mhm.
so talk to us a bit about that being mindful of swapping packs and setting your stuff down and somebody else having to pick it up for you.
Yeah, to provide some context for the people who haven't read the book yet. Um, Notice I say yet because a
It's
bestseller on the
okay.
way. Um, to provide some context, I took some Marines on a run, and I had them come in with a certain load in their packs. And this was a student who allowed us to be able to do this. And we all had our packs, and they weighed the exact same thing. And we went out, we did this run, and when we got to the halfway point, they said, "Let's switch packs." And when we switched packs, I am now carrying somebody else's load. I'm now carrying their pack, and I recognized immediately that this pack was way heavier than mine. And it put me in this position where I begin to think that you have no idea who's carrying what. There's an assumption that we're all running this race and going through the same thing, but you got no idea who's carrying what. And from the emotional intelligence standpoint, Jess, if you would allow me to be able to say this, because this is where empathy lives, is on the social awareness side. And the way we teach it, when I'm traveling and doing this, is consider what an iceberg looks like. The tip of the iceberg is what you can see. When we look at everybody, all we see is their tip of their iceberg. But if you know anything about nature, the greater mass of the iceberg lies where? It's below the surface. And
Mm-hmm.
so we tend to make 100% of our decisions about people based on the 10% we can see, what's above the waterline. But the reality is, we need to take that deeper dive. There's my term again. We need to take that deeper dive. And when you do that and you consider other people, that's where that empathy comes in. That's where you'll find out what's actually going on in their life. But the only way you find that out, social awareness is about asking questions, right? And listening is what you can see. And then whatever you can't see and whatever you can't hear, you ask those questions about. That fills in that blank. But if we don't do that, then we make assumptions that everything that's happening below somebody's surface looks just like the 10% that's above. So when I carried that pack and I realized that that pack was at least 20 pounds heavier than mine, and he was doing the exact same run, it really changed the way I thought about people and their situations. And I never forgot about that. And that's why I chose to put that in the book, because everybody needs to stop making 100% of their decisions based on the 10% they can see with people. Be a little bit more considerate, be a little bit more careful, exercise a little bit more emotional intelligence to make your relationship more effective with that person.
That's real good. That's really good. Yeah, like okay, so you guys, y'all know that I'm about my people, I'm about my circle, I'm about those that
Definitely.
pour into me. When I tell you that this man has the heart for pouring into any and everyone who will
Absolutely.
allow, who requests, and who needs it, pick get the book. Get the book. We're gonna make sure that you
Get the
have
book.
the link
Get the book.
in the show notes right below. Make sure that you cop this. I promise you that the range of stories and the things that were shared is, I know we always, that's another one of those, we always say it. There's something for everybody in this book. But when I tell you, like, there's
Yeah.
literally something for everybody in this book, even though I gave that shout out at the beginning that it's like, hey, gents, fellas, like make sure you tune into this one. And ladies, make sure that you send this to the guys that are in your life that you care about. Like this, the stuff in the book, it's not just for men, it's not just for women. Like when I tell you that the range of stories, I mean, come on, we got an emotional intelligence guru here live in the flesh. You think
Let's
he
go.
don't?
Let's go.
He
You know
speaks
it.
to the whole range of emotions, and so I just picked out a couple of the chapters that resonated with me very deeply, that I'm like, ooh, I really, for my personal experience, I see this as being something that could really change those who are around me in the immediate. There are so many other stories and lessons and things that are packed into this book that I'm telling you, know what? As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go ahead and put my money where my mouth is. After you read the book, if you don't find a chapter or two or five that
Come
resonate
on.
with you, send me a DM. Matter of fact, put it on blast and hit me
Come
in the
on.
comments. I'll pay you back.
Come on.
I will
Come
give you
on.
the money back after you read this book if you go from cover to cover, because you ain't gonna even have to go cover to cover. Once you get
Well,
the first half of it, I know you will find something. Like
not even.
and Demyas didn't ask me
Thank you.
to do this. I'm literally guaranteeing it that much
I appreciate
because
you.
that's how powerful these stories in here were. And even if you aren't a reader per se, it's written in a way that you're able to consume it and get the lesson out of it without like all of the science talk, the super all the jargon and everything like that. So and I want you guys to hold me to it. Anybody that you
Okay.
send this to, go ahead, cop the book, and I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is.
I love it.
And so moving a little further into our conversation, another thing I wanted to find out with you was for you personally, what was a time where you experienced like your everybody can't go moment? What did that look like for you? What were the things that like led
Oh
to
man.
that climax, which for
Yes.
everybody that comes on, that climactic moment is different. Like some people's it was just like "Nah," and some people it's like this great big theatrical thing. So,
Yeah.
what was that like for you, and what was your story and what happened?
Yeah, there's so many different things, man. I'm gonna just rattle off a few. Like I ain't always been the EQ guy. You know what I mean? So I used to like the party scene and all of that, being in the Marine Corps, traveling the world. Um, but I didn't feel at home in those scenes. I didn't feel at home in those scenes. I started to look around and I'm just watching people operate aimlessly, and I started feeling like, man, like this is not really me, right? So I started removing myself from those circles. And as I ascended, let's talk professional, as I started to ascend the ranks in the military, you have everybody in the military is not creme de la creme. Let's get it right. Everybody's not rocking it. Some people are in there and they have an occupation and they're going to do their time, whether it's 4, 10, 20, 30 to 40 years. They're going to do their time and they're going to leave. And then there are other people who make it a livelihood. There are other people who live up to the core values of honor, courage, and commitment, Marine Corps side. There are people who say that I'm going to walk the walk and I'm going to talk the talk. But then when I started to realize that there were people who were satisfied just collecting a paycheck, that was the first time I really saw that everybody can't go. Everybody's not supposed to be this senior leader in the Marine Corps. Everybody's not supposed to. The few, the proud, the Marines, well, there's the few of the few as well. There's a few of the few. And my whole goal was to be the few of the few. And there's no one you will ever speak to that mentions my name that will say that I wasn't one of the few of the few. What I mean? I rarely say check. I got the receipts. You know what I mean? I got the receipts that say that I needed to be able to move up. And so as I ascended, each time I got to that point, you would recognize that there were just certain people, again, like even when they saw success, they didn't follow success. They didn't want to follow success because they were comfortable. And there are a lot of people who are just that, just in the book. I talk about conquering the deadly C's, those two C's, conquering comfort and complacency. Those were the two C's that people are navigating that they like being in. I didn't like seeing people. I didn't like being comfortable. I didn't like being complacent. So I started to work harder physically to be able to get my body to what it needed to be. So when I took my physical fitness test, I would be higher than other people. When it was time for education, that was the reason why I went and got the degrees while I was in. I got the associates while I was in. I got the bachelor's in psychology with the focus in military resilience. I got the master's in human services, counseling, crisis response, and trauma. Everybody couldn't go because they had the opportunity, but they just chose not to. So I said, you know what? If you're comfortable being here, go ahead and be complacent because there's more room for me at the top and I'm going to go there. I have to be able to get there. And then when you talk about from a personal standpoint, listen, when it comes to me and my business, I've opened the doors for many people who are great at speaking. I've opened the doors of my business for many people who are great at writing, who are great at communicating, who are great at their craft. But when it comes to firing like I need them to fire, to be able to go and answer the call that's on my life and for people, we're just not on the same wavelength. And it's not that so I had to leave and go and find my people. But let's talk about everybody can't go. But can I add something different? Everybody couldn't stay either. And I was one of the people who couldn't stay. I had the opportunity to stay in the Marine Corps and continue to go because I was successful. But the push everybody had to try to get me to stay in wasn't as great as the pull that I knew that the world needed me for. And I knew Everybody couldn't go with me to ascend, and I knew that I couldn't stay to continue to elevate. And again, elevation requires change, and that change that was needed was for me to realize everybody couldn't go, and to realize that I needed to leave and I couldn't stay.
That's dope. That's super dope. That might be a new shirt, y'all. Everybody can't stay, or I can't stay
Hey,
over
come
there.
on.
We're gonna have to noodle on that one. Well, that brings me to the end of the questions that I have for you,
Yeah.
and I thank you so much for coming on, sharing a part of your story, and sharing some of your tools, techniques, your coaching. I
Yeah.
mean,
Thank you.
shoot, y'all kind of just got like a session,
Little mini
on me.
session.
You know what I'm saying? Like there were so many nuggets in there. I wasn't even calling them out as we went, but I shoot, now I want to go back and see how many times did you make me do the snaps, because I'm like, he in here waxing, okay?
Come on.
So thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you.
I'm sure we will end up having you on again in the future,
I hope
and
so.
you guys be sure to check those show notes for ordering the book. If you are interested in getting with Dimyas directly and personally for any coaching, a consult, or anything like that. And I'll let you go ahead and get us closed out.
Hey, listen, once again, I can't thank you enough for allowing me to be able to have this time with you, this time with you and the time with your audience. I'll be super simple, you know what I mean, in my closing. I believe that my favorite quote is, one of my favorite quotes is, every work performed is a self-portrait. Autograph your work with excellence. And so when I say that, I want to know, what are you signing today when you're listening to this podcast, when you're watching this podcast? Have you autographed your work with excellence today? And if not, what's stopping you? You got another shot, you got another chance. As long as there's breath in your body, I'm asking that you think about it, because you don't know if there's more sand on the top of your hourglass or if there's more sand at the bottom of your hourglass. The goal should be able to live life as if there's more sand on the bottom, because we don't know how much time we got left. Time is of the essence. Let's go.
There you have it.